I'd like to tell you all a story. Picture the Australian outback, that is to say, out of Sydney, where I was hiking with a group of university students from all across the world. About an hour into this walk, we come across a road sign warning drivers to watch for the wildlife. Literally, an Animal Crossing sign. One of our group, a sporty Argentinian man, stares at this sign in amazed shock. He reads the sign. "Slow down, bandicoots." "Wait," he says, "Crash is real?" It was one of the purest moments of joy I'd ever seen. A grown man reminded of the games he'd played as a boy, and suddenly, those games, those memories, were able to make the real world into a more magical place for him, if only for an instant. Granted, real bandicoots don't wear pants and rarely fight scientists, but I think that moment meant something. Crash Bandicoot means something. An Australian marsupial from an American game made for a Japanese game console can bring someone from Latin America so much happiness. Crash Bandicoot is undeniably a worldwide icon, and he means a lot to so many people. So, in honor of Crash Bandicoot and my friend Augustine, let's talk about Crash and imagine what would happen if he finally took his rightful place in gaming's de facto Hall of Fame and joined the Super Smash Bros. Roster. Part 1. The Life of a Bandicoot. Alright, I'm gonna tell you all a second story. This one's not about a man seeing a sign once. In the 90s, before they were making prestige games about sad people hitting each other with bricks, game studio Naughty Dog was inspired by the likes of Mario and Sonic and sought to make their own platformer, codename Sonic Ass Game. Sonic Ass Game might sound like something you'd find on the weird part of Newgrounds, but it was actually named that way because the idea was it would be a 3D platformer where the camera would be behind the Sonic-like mascot, staring at their tushy. Naughty Dog's Sonic OC would take inspiration from the Tasmanian Devil and be an Australian marsupial. Thus, Willy the Wombat was born. Meanwhile, after a failed collaboration with Nintendo, Japanese electronics company Sony was launching a game system to rival the house of Super Mario. But, to do that, they'd need a mascot of their own. Enter Polygon Man? Oh no thank you. That's just Guy Fieri if he made a pact with Satan. That won't do at all. He'll need someone else. Cue Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog would soon show Sony their impressive Willy prototype, Sony liked what they saw, and the makings of a PlayStation mascot began. During development, a fun mechanic where the player would crash into crates led to Willy the Wombat getting a name and species change, and finally, Crash is real. Crash Bandicoot would release in 1996 and immediately became a hit. Unlike Super Mario 64's more open levels, Crash would offer linear gauntlets of challenging platforming. Naughty Dog followed the first game with 2 platforming sequels, and beloved karting game that I'm really bad at, Crash Team Racing. All of these games were huge hits and would forever mark Crash Bandicoot as one of the PlayStation 1's brightest stars. But this is where things get weird and corporate. So often mascots like Mario or Master Chief or Jared Fogle or Sonic make a big splash for a company and then stay linked with that brand forever. But not Crash. Crash might have been synonymous with Sony, but he's not a Sony IP. As I understand it, Naughty Dog conceived Willy the Wombat while working with Universal, and the nature of their contract meant that Universal would own the IP. So, while Universal did allow Sony to publish the original Crash games, that was more of a fortuitous brand collaboration. Kind of like how Nintendo published Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 despite not owning Spider-Man or even Moon Knight. This meant that after the deal was up, Crash had no console home. He was third party. On top of that, Naughty Dog was no longer the development team. Now Crash's games would be weirder, less tight, more scattershot and multi-platform. Despite his whirling nature, Crash didn't really lend himself to new spins on the formula. He'd struggled to keep up with more cinematic mascot platformers like Ratchet and Clank, or Naughty Dog's own Jak and Daxter. He'd even get tribal tattoos like anyone having an identity crisis. Meanwhile, various corporate mergers and acquisitions would see Crash's publisher change from Universal to Vivendi to Activision. After 2010, Crash just stopped getting new games, and they wouldn't even let him be a PlayStation All-Star. The Bandicoot brand was in a weird spot. Luckily, this would not be the end of the Bandicoot story. An Uncharted cameo, well-received remakes of the original games, and a mainline sequel have brought Crash back into the spotlight. He's finally realised his destiny as a nostalgia brand for millennials. An iconic, nostalgic mascot platformer sounds like the perfect recipe for a Super Smash Brother. So, it may not have happened at the Game Awards or the February Direct, but what if Smash had a third Skylander join its roster? What if Crash Smash? Part 2. Design Philosophy. Remember when Banjo and Kazooie came to Smash, and a lot of people just said that their simpler moveset felt like a Smash 64 character, especially compared to the other Ultimate DLC? and then people just complained about their egg camping playstyle. They could have easily given Banjo moves where he turns into a crocodile or a washing machine, or where he builds his own car, but they didn't. Instead, the Smash team focused on the core movements and personality of Banjo and Kazooie in their basic animal forms. The Smash design was more about feeling true to Banjo and Kazooie the characters, than constantly referencing weird random moments from Banjo-Kazooie games, although naturally a lot of these movements were taken straight from the games. I think Crash Bandicoot should follow the example of his fellow pant-wearing platforming mammal and strive for a similar simplicity. So, even though he could have a moveset involving jetpacks or motorbikes or boars or carts or mechs or mutants or his arch nemesis or the new masks from Crash 4, I'm not going to include those things and try to mostly stick to Crash just being a crate-smashing Bandicoot. But here's the thing, striving for simplicity is not going to be that easy. The main platforming levels of the original Naughty Dog game allowed Crash to spin, jump, and whump, and not much else, with the sequels only slightly expanding on this toolkit. Smash Bros. Characters have more moves than that, to put it bluntly, and we can't just make half of Crash's moves his spin because, well, then we'd have another Smash Sonic on our hands. That many spin moves would just be nauseating. So, to avoid having Crash spin out of control, we need to look beyond the Naughty Dog games for his basic moves. If we want our Crash to be a brawler with variety and personality, we'll need to look to games where he got his jukes out. So, our goal today is to have Crash feel like the kinetic, frenetic Bandicoot from the Naughty Dog games by drawing from a bunch of the games they didn't make. That's right, y'all. We're about to treat Crash of the Titans like it's the Bandicoot Bible. Sort of. Let the insanity begin. Part 3. The Moveset. For his neutral special, Crash will try spinning. That's a good trick. This one's a no-brainer as it's Crash's signature move. Just like celebrities, because it's famous, it must therefore be good. So, instead of having the spin be half of his moves like Sonic, we'll just make this one spin super centralizing to his kit. Press B lightly to do a quick spin. This would be great as a get off me and combo tool. Or, you can do the full spin cycle by mashing B. Based on the Def Tornado spin from Crash Bandicoot Warped, this version has enough knockback to eventually be a kill option and can also be used as a recovery as Crash lifts into the air the more you mash. Although, you can only benefit from the recovery part once before hitting the ground, and naturally the longer spin would be more punishable. On top of all of this, the spins can also be used as reflectors, because there's no chance Crash Bandicoot is going to let the damn robotic operating buddy have a more versatile spin than him. Kirby Crash might be kind of adorable, but once he starts spinning, there'll be a few frames of strange Kirby body horror as he tries to replicate Crash's multi-faced smear frames. Or maybe I'm just a bad artist and the Smash team would do it justice. Crash's side special is a juicy one as he lobs Wumpa Fruit at his enemies. This is a reference to his surprisingly casual fruit slinging in Crash Bandicoot 2's N. Gin boss fight. Of course, this isn't the only way Crash can attack with Wumpa Fruit. If you hold the button down instead of pressing it, Crash Bandicoot will equip the Fruit Bazooka, which honestly should be called the Wumpazooka. This weapon's impressive range and manual aiming forces opponents to care about the Bandicoot no matter how far away he is. The thing is, I don't think Crash should be a zoner, so these fruity moves would need to be a bit rotten. The Wumpa Fruit should be like Diddy Kong's Peanuts in that they lose trades against everything, and both the Fruit Toss and the Bazooka should have dismal frame data for the kinds of projectile they are. Still, a Wumpa Fruit a day keeps the Dr. Mario away. I couldn't think of a better line to end that paragraph. As is tradition for third-party platforming characters in Smash, Crash's up special sees him bounce on something. This time it's a TNT crate, and like those other mascots, this move doesn't leave Crash helpless. As soon as Crash leaps off the TNT, it will start its countdown timer before exploding. Don't ask me how painted wood is able to display a changing countdown timer. If I was a coward, I'd say it was because Naughty Dog needed an obvious visual cue to inform players on how much time the crate had before exploding, but I'm not a coward, so I'll just call Naughty Dog hacks who don't understand how paint works and play the CinemaSin sound. We couldn't afford the CinemaSin sound. Anyway, if you hit crate, it go boom early. Oh, also this crate obeys gravity, which technically isn't true to the Crash games, but you also can't spawn TNT out his arse at will in those games either. Crash's down special is also creative. It uses a crate. Another crate. Crash throws a crate beneath him like Pac-Man's fire hydrant, but this is no ordinary crate. This is an Aku Aku crate, which means if Crash destroys it, he gets a little help from his best friend and talking plank of wood, Aku Aku. This mystical mask will magically float around Crash, which is an even less COVID-safe way of wearing a mask than wearing it beneath your nostrils. While Aku Aku is about, Crash is able to tank a single hit without taking any knockback, kind of like Ryu and Ken's focus attacks, but as a passive buff. After taking a hit, Aku Aku vanishes. Arenas. This would probably be a pretty powerful mechanic, which is why you must first spend a moment to deploy the crate, and if the opponent is able to destroy the crate before you do, they're able to steal the mask for themselves. But just teaming up with anyone would be out of character for Aku Aku, so we'll take a leaf out of Crash Team Racing and make it so that if an evil aligned character destroys the crate, they're joined by Uka Uka instead. The best part about this is that we can finally learn if Ness is as objectively evil as his playstyle suggests. Only one mask will be able to be spawned at a time per Crash player, so you can't camp and farm masks. In the rare case where a player is able to collect free masks, obviously that would give them Starman style invincibility as a reward, but this would be closer to an Easter egg than anything of any actual utility. Oh, also the masks would go away if the fighter they are protecting is grabbed and would probably disappear over time. So don't worry, there are drawbacks. My imaginary game mechanic isn't overpowered. Now for Crash's normal moves. The basic idea is that Crash should be a brawler like Mario, but feral. He'd have chaotic, cartoonish energy and wild movement. Some people said that Banjo felt like a Hanna-Barbera character, but Crash should feel like a full-on Looney Tune, and his normal moves are the perfect place for him to unleash the inner lunatic. And if we look to Crash's extended history, we can find that many of his moves already exist. Crash's jab sees the Bandicoot violently lurch forward as he does his basic attacks from Crash of the Titans. In that game, because the camera and battle arenas need to accommodate large titans as well as little old Crash, his basic on-foot attacks have him stretch out and zip across the battlefield. This could translate to Smash as a unique jab where the fighter travels across the stage as they attack. It's reckless, ridiculous, and even if it was originally as bombastic as it was to meet a gameplay need for Crash of the Titans, I think it's perfectly in character for any iteration of Crash to use such an unorthodox fighting style. Crash's forward tilt is comparatively more ordinary, being a simple punch, where his fist grows to the size of a medicine ball. This big wallop is actually from Crash's appearance in Skylanders, which might not be the most popular moment in Crash's history, but it's clear that the Skylanders animators were really talented and cared a lot about treating Crash with care, so I see no harm in looking to it as source material, unlike the cartoon where Crash's Australian accent is a crime against nature.
You don't even know the half of it, mate.
Also, Skylanders influenced Amiibo, so it wouldn't be the first time Smash looked to the home of Bulldog Spyro and his weird friends for inspiration. Crash's down tilt is based on his sister Coco's sweep kick from The Wrath of Cortex. It's quick, it combos, you can imagine how it would work. I haven't really mentioned her yet, but I spent a lot of time thinking about Coco for this video, but not in a weird way, so I'll talk more about her later. Crash's up tilt is a backflipping kick and is also from Skylanders. This move is like Fox's up smash, although it trades the power of that move for very respectable range. It's also a great move for using after. Crash's dash attack is a return to the classics, as it's his slide attack from Crash 2 onwards. This move would 2-frame, be a combo starter, and also have a unique property where if a player jumps while doing it, it would cancel into a very high jump. This is based on how the slide works in the Crash games, and I think more of the platforming characters in Smash should retain some of the movement options from their home games. Crash's forward smash is a big, springing kick from Crash of the Titans. Just like the jab, it propels Crash forward. Perhaps this move could jolt Crash beyond the edge of a platform, like Kirby's melee dash attack. Smash has already seen breakdancing down smashes before, but Crash is definitely just enough of a Poochie-esque 90s cool guy that he deserves one too. This is why Crash's down smash is the Gyro Jackhammer, also from Crash of the Titans. Crash's up smash sees him hurl a Nitro Crate. This would be a devastating projectile with a nasty arc, and it explodes on contact. Most wicked of all, it would be able to edge guard. The trade-off is that it'd be slow, and because Nitro is so volatile, you could even broil the Bandicoot if it detonates too close to Crash. Crash's forward air is based on the powerful free kick from Crash of the Titans. In this moveset, it's kind of like Lucario's forward air. You ever just suddenly remember that Lucario is a character? Anyway, Crash can use the sour spot of this move to combo, while the sweet spot packs a punch. Assuming kicks can pack punch. Crash's neutral air was kind of hard to decide on, because frankly, Crash's spin would be perfect for it, but I didn't want to just use it again here, so I basically did the laziest thing possible. His neutral air is Crash's spin, but upside down. Mind-blowing stuff, isn't it? Actually, it's derived from this animation where Crash drills beneath the dirt. I think this move would feel like Mario's down air, but not a multi-hit, if that makes sense. Look, I know I said not too much spinning, but there's either this or a default Smash-branded sex kick. So, Crash's kicking up air looks like a fairly standard up air, right? Well, it's actually based on Crash's block pushing animation from Skylanders. Of course, as anyone who has ever had to move a fridge before knows, kick flipping large objects is the optimal way to move them. Crash's back air takes us to Skyland one last time. as it's based on the start of his basic attack combo from his appearance there. This 2-hit move starts with the same kind of punch as the forward tilt and follows into a kick, but unlike Skylanders, it doesn't link into his spin animation. Speaking of link, this move would feel just about the same as the Hero of Time's back air, and of course, Crash's down air is his iconic ground pound. The problem is that, to remain authentic, this would be a stall and fall, and one with atrocious frame data at that. But we don't want this to be a completely terrible move, so let's give it an entire cheese platter of weird properties. So first, we'll let it spike, that'd be your Brie. Then for your Gouda, we'll have it do a stupid amount of shield damage. Next for Cheddar, we'll give it a sour spot against grounded opponents, that sends them at a nasty horizontal angle. And lastly, we'll just cover it in that cheese you find in an aerosol can, by letting its sweet spot bury grounded foes. I don't know much about cheese. Crash's grab is fairly standard, as is his headbutting pummel. Crash's forward throw is based on how he'd toss Neo Cortex around in Twinsanity, and similarly, his back throw is based on how he'd use Neo Cortex in his spin attack when they were both buddied up. As a smash throw, it's also reminiscent of Mario's 64-inspired back throw, but let's not make any jokes along the lines of "So long, Neo Cortex!" and simply respect the Doctor's sexual privacy. Crash's up throw is kind of like how he manhandles Neo Cortex, but more than that, this big slam is a reference to how Crash whacks Crunch Bandicoot down during this Mind Over Mutant cutscene. If you haven't played that game, the cutscenes all had different art styles, which is strange, but also incredibly cool. Now, I admit this looks like a down throw, but I figure if Crash jumps high enough, it can pass for a Rob-style slam to earth up throw, because the actual down throw is a lot more down throwy. Several falling crates smash down on Crash's opponent before a final crate launches them out. This is a reference to the unforgettable and sadistic sequence at the end of Crash levels where Crash is pelted with every box he missed during the level. Between this, the TNT, Nitro crates, and Aku Aku boxes, this moveset does have a lot of crates, and you know, that much focus on crates honestly might be PTSD caused by the amount of time I've watched Crash be battered by them. Before we get to the final smash, it's the time of the show where I pitch something really stupid that shouldn't be in a moveset, and somehow the comment section doesn't call me out on how bad of an idea it is. So, one of the most memorable parts of the Crash games is when Crash dies. And that wasn't a spoiler. I'm not talking about some tragic cutscene where our beloved hero sacrifices himself for the greater good. No, Naughty Dog decided to have unique and ghoulish animations for almost every way Crash could die. Funnily enough, they still do that to this day, although where Crash would be comically frozen in ice or flattened like a pancake, The Last of Us just seems to have infinite amounts of animations of Ellie being beaten by pipes or eaten by dogs. But I digress. What if we could somehow have Crash Bandicoot harness the powers of death itself in his moveset? So, imagine Crash is off stage. He's already used his double jump, spin, and up B, and still has no way to recover. But then, a miracle. After a bright flash, Crash's soul itself emerges from where his body was as an angelic Bandicoot flies back to the stage. Let me explain. Angel Crash rising to the heavens is probably the most iconic death animation in the Crash games, and of course anything that has a character gain wings screams Smash Brothers recovery. So, my idea was that after Crash has already used his up B, if the player is still desperately trying to input another up B, probably either by mashing or holding the button, that player then transcends their mortal body to ascend and play on as Crash's angelic soul. This Hail Mary up B would be intangible and travel incredibly far, but the player is now playing as Angel Crash. You're basically still playing as Crash, but you now have an extra jump because wings. Sephiroth can do it with literally half the wings, so why not our furry pit wannabe? The downside is that Angel Crash is on death's door, so they should be the lightest character in the game by a significant margin. Pichu should feel like Gigantamax or even Gen 1 Pikachu in comparison. Of course, while Angel Crash would be limited to just the TNT up B. No angels becoming angels. I don't think a Crash Bandicoot Smash moveset is really the right place to answer what the afterlife is after the afterlife. Now that I've said all that, let me tell you why it might be a bad idea. First, it's really dark. I mean, Crash is literally dying at will just to try and get to a platform. Also, I think this mechanic would be so weird and flashy that it would distract from what Crash is actually about. Crash games aren't about an animal's angelic soul going to heaven, unless I missed out on some major subtext in those games. Look at it this way, Pac-Man the game is about eating pellets, but if you look at his Smash moveset, you'd think that Pac-Man is a dude who loves fire hydrants, because the fire hydrant is such a big, hard to ignore part of his kit. Crash is about spinning and breaking crates. If his final celestial form is here as well, that might send the wrong message about who he is. What do you think? As you can see, I'm a bit torn. I don't have all the answers for this angel mechanic, which is kind of appropriate for something so spiritual. But now it's time for the final smash. Crash unleashes the Smash Ball, spins to equip Aku Aku as a mask, and then Aku Aku fires a blast of lightning in front of Crash. Anyone hit by the lightning is now paralyzed as Aku Aku and Crash violently charge into them, launching them far away. The tempo of this move is kind of like Ganondorf's final smash. This isn't that elaborate of a final smash, but I wanted to find a way to use the Aku Aku invincibility as his final smash without it being a cutscene or transformation final smash, seeing his ultimate has too many of the former and due to a change in design philosophy, none of the latter. Crash is in a weird position because there's a lot of history and a lot of options for his final smash, but wearing Aku Aku is kind of his signature super mode. Oh, and of course this final smash is also why the invincibility was such a small part of the Aku Aku crate move. I'm curious as to what people think the ideal final smash is for Crash. Against my better judgment, I do read the comments, so let me know if you have a cool final smash idea for him that you're passionate about. And this isn't entirely a cynical YouTuber call to action. I do genuinely want to know. Anyway, that's the moveset. Compared to my other videos, I gave Crash a lot more moves, straight from his games, but that's honestly because between those games, I think everything he needs is in there and would transition really well into Smash. He'd be a wacky brawler character whose movements and combos have this drum-like tempo as he closes in on his enemies. His crates would also give him a bag of tricks that can blow up on his face at any time like his Wile E. Coyote. What could be more fitting for the cartoony platformer whose difficult games make death and failure into slapstick jokes? Mr. Bandicoot would have the panache to bash, gnash, thrash, lash out, smash, and of course, crash his way to victory. Well, maybe not Nash. Part 4. The other stuff. Crash has so much personality that there's a lot you could do with his taunts. For my picks, first up we have Crash use his yo-yo. Mercifully, this has no hitbox, so you can't just hold it out at ledge for easy edge cards. Next is a weird one. I think Crash should use a megaphone as a reference to this classic ad where he literally taunts Nintendo. The problem is that actual game Crash doesn't speak, so I don't know what he'd say. He could say gibberish, or his first word.
Pancakes!
Or maybe if Super Mario is in the match, he could suddenly change voice actor just to say,
"Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived."
Lastly, one of his taunts should absolutely be the entire Crash dance. At this point, I've spent a not insignificant amount of my life drawing game characters crotch chopping. This should also be a victory screen, obviously. Crash's stage could be based on the first level of the first game, Insanity Beach, or the side-scrolling bonus levels to avoid it being a walk-off stage. Or it could be a travelling stage using the warp room from Crash Warped to go literally anywhere in the series. I think it would be cool if when Crash gets a Starman, instead of the usual music playing, it was the Aku Aku invincibility drums, kind of like how Ryu and Ken have different parry sound effects. And when Crash is KO'd, there should be callbacks to his death animations, like if he falls in the bottom blast zone, his shoes bounce back up for a moment. For his costumes, you could reference Tribal Tattoo Crash, Fake Crash, Japanese box art Crash, or Willy the Wombat. Or he could have palette swaps based on his Aussie animal friends and enemies like Ripperoo, Tiny Tiger, or Dingodile. Or you could take some of the incredible costumes from Crash 4 and use those. Of course, I have seen a lot of people suggest that Coco could be used for half of his costumes, and, well... Alright, get out your calipers, it's time for some phrenology as we talk about Bandicoot bone structure, in a segment I'm calling the Coco Conundrum. Look, I get the instinct to have Coco be playable as an Alf-style costume swap for Crash. I do. Coco's cool, and with games like the N. Sane trilogy, she's functionally interchangeable with Crash. But that's only possible because the animators in those games worked really hard to make it possible. Because she's not actually interchangeable with Crash. For starters, their personalities are different, so you can't put animations like Crash's idle and fidgets onto Coco and expect it to feel like her. But more importantly, from an animation perspective, their bones are too different. It's all about the bones. Their skeletons, their proportions are too different, so they can't really share any animations, even if they had the same personality. You ever see those videos of Pikachu doing Bayonetta's taunts? Because those characters are built differently, those animations look like nightmares. Erotic Pikachu nightmares. That's a much more extreme example, but you can't just give one 3D model the animations from another model with a different skeleton and expect it to look natural. Especially when you're talking about animations of the same quality standards as Smash Bros, and especially when one of those Bandicoots doesn't have a neck. So, Olimar and Alf can be costume swaps because those beautiful dudes do the same things and have the same chiseled physique. Crash and Coco are too distinct. And Coco can't technically be an Echo Fighter either. Part of the reason that Isabelle isn't a villager Echo Fighter is because her proportions are too different, and despite being different species, those characters are much more similar than Crash and Coco. But look, I still think Coco deserves to be here. She's great. She's like Crash, but smart, but she's also badass enough to ride a tiger on the Great Wall of China. So, here's my solution. Just pretend she's an Echo Fighter. Just lie and say that she's the same as Daisy and Dark Samus. Put her in as a fighter, give her the same moveset, with the same frame data, even if all the animations would have to be built from the ground up, and her hitboxes and hurtboxes might be slightly different. Ken is already basically a real character pretending to be an Echo, so there's sort of precedent. This is probably a complete pipe dream, but I don't think it's impossible. The Smash Bros animators are some of the best in the business, and including Coco alongside Crash is a pretty common hope among fans. And with Pyra and Mythra, the Smash team has proven that DLC fighter packs can have 2 fighters for the price of 1. So yeah, I don't think she can be a skin. She can't be an Echo, but let's just make her an Echo anyway. Conclusion. That's the Crash Bandicoot video. I was hoping to get this video done by the Game Awards, which that didn't happen. Whoops. Crash, being in Smash, is one of those things that just seems perfect. He's undeniably an icon, he's back in the spotlight, represents old console wars rivalries, and his movements and mechanics are an easy fit. I'd like to talk about the process a little bit. So, if I'm planning a video, I'll deliberately try and avoid other people's moveset pictures for that character, so that I don't, rip them off. And yes, the fact I watched and retweeted Aaron Ocean's Hollow Knight video means I'm not planning to do anything for that character right now. Sorry, Hollow Knight fans. Although Aaron set the bar so high, I don't think I could possibly do better, so go watch his video, it's really good. But anyway, after I'd already locked in the moveset for Crash, while I was looking up reference pictures, I found a moveset picture for Crash by P. Fritz that came to the same conclusions for 3 of the 4 specials. So, shoutouts to P. Fritz for having good Crash Bandicoot opinions and excellent art and graphic design. I imagine a lot of the other Crash movesets out there are along similar lines. My point with all this is, I don't think I have the hottest Crash Bandicoot takes. I think the character is such a natural fit for Smash that a lot of people have the same vision of how he would work, which I think is wonderful. Just the idea that Crash Bandicoot is so perfect for Smash, but there's this cultural osmosis willing him in. I really hope it happens. It's weird, people say he's really likely, but as far as I'm aware, there haven't been any major rumors or leaks supporting that. Just a communal understanding that he's such a no-brainer that there's no reason he shouldn't be in. You might even say, it's about time. It's also about time to wrap up. Shoutouts to my friends James and Sam, who are both huge Crash Bandicoot fans who helped me iron out this moveset. You know who you are. Although if your name also happens to be James or Sam and you don't think I'm talking about you, I'd like to thank you as well. Thank you for watching, whether you're a James, a Sam, or even a third name. I'm grateful at how receptive people have been to these videos, and I just wish I could get them out faster. Thanks for watching, and hopefully someday we'll all be able to say, Crash is real, Lee in the Smash Brothers roster. There we go, full circle, we did it. Bye!
Hey, anybody want to play some Uncharted?